the Papah Trail. Let's go, 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 go. Yeah, 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 yeah. For the love of money, niggas come around. For the love of money, some stay around. For the love of money, when a nigga want money, yeah. I gotta shake it, 12 at night to 5 in the morning, they don't give a fuck now. If it's for that money, niggas gon' bark and they bite like a motherfucking dog. Gotta party like a motherfucking dog. For that cat, I am gon' roof and I'm barking at that cat, and I am gon' take the roof off and I'm riding that ride. Rip niggas to the left, but I'm steady on the only right. I'm swerving with a purpose, A nigga been sipping on that purple. A nigga been cheaping on that purple. Cause I'm getting money. I'm getting money. Cause I'm getting money. And I'm laughing all the way to the motherfucking bank. And I'm telling her, tell me later if she thinking.
And the biggest things I discovered in my work was the existence of a supranational committee composed of 300 men called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians.
300 people you've never heard of. Get your vote. And he's not talking about the secret societies you've heard 100 times. This is what the headlines never touch.
This is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them. This is not a book that talks about they. It gives you specifics.
Now, this is one of those videos that rarely stays visible for long. But what you're about to watch will explain a lot of the strange things happening in the world right now. So let's get right into it.
Who and what is the Committee of 300? Well, I've dealt with that. I've told you this is a supranational body that knows no boundaries, respects the laws of no countries. The first time that they were publicly announced was by Gibuson of Walter Rathenau. He was the financial advisor to the Kaiser of Germany, and he was also the financial advisor to the Rothschilds, the French family Rothschild. So he must have known what he's talking about. He made an astonishing statement in 1934. He said that rule the world. They are known only to each other, and nothing happens without their consent.
This isn't about symbols or handshakes or a club everyone already suspects. This is the top of the chain. At least that's his claim. The structure nobody sees. And as this man will explain, every organization has its place. They all fit into a hierarchy. But at the very top, 300 people. Pay attention to this part.
I came across this quite by accident when I was serving in Africa, in Angola, and I was given a series of documents which were only supposed to be handed in what we call above the top level of classification of intelligence documents. And there I discovered that whilst I thought I was in Africa fighting against the invasion of the communists, I was in fact fighting to introduce socialist regimes in the black African countries, and that I was actually working for a committee called the Committee of 300, also known in intelligence circles as the Olympians.
This isn't someone guessing from the sidelines. He's describing a moment where the story didn't match the mission. He thought he was fighting one enemy. Then he claims he realized he was building something else entirely. And that raised a different kind of question. Not who's in charge, but how high the chain really goes. His name is Dr. John Coleman, and he frames this as a 25-year-old investigation shaped by intelligence-level access. Let's keep going.
In 1986, I wrote a work called Mind Control, Metaphysics, extremely low frequency radiation and weather modifications. And in that work, July the 8th, 1986, I said that the top level intelligence organization in the United States was the National Reconnaissance Office, far bigger than the CIA and any of the other intelligence agencies. And by the way, we have about 10 different ones in the United States. I even had the audacity to give the address of this organization. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Sam Donaldson, the gentleman who wears, he came on with the program in prime time and he said, this is one of the biggest scoops that ABC has ever had. And he told about the National Reconnaissance Organization. The exact same thing that I published 8 years earlier. I tell you this to set the stage so that you'll understand I do have some experience and that I know that
on the claim. He's planting a marker in time, 1986. And he says he named the organization before the public was even supposed to know it existed. Because once you understand that layer exists, you stop thinking intelligence is just spies in meetings. It's reach, it's visibility, it's who gets to see the world first and who reacts second. And if a system like that sits above the usual agencies, then you have to ask a darker question. What's of that? Watch this.
And I came across the families in Italy who were called the Fondi, meaning the people who had all the money. They were all members of the Committee of 300, the Lucatis, the Recanati, the Volpi du Miseratis. These people are so wealthy that they would make David Rockefeller look like a piker. That is how rich they are. And this is the committee that runs the world. Now, in my book, The Committee of 300, I name every one of them. Not they. It gives you specifics.
This is where his story shifts from theory to names. Not they, not someone. He's saying, I can point to families. And whether you believe his list or not, the idea underneath it is real. Power doesn't reset every 4 years. It accumulates. It inherits. It survives scandals, elections, and headlines. Because the kind of influence that lasts isn't built on popularity. It's built on ownership, on access, on networks that don't need to introduce themselves. But even wealth, the whole machine, weld and
State Mikhail Gorbachev visited the United States a few years ago, flanked by George Bush and Quayle. He opened his Gorbachev Foundation in the United States, and he let slip. He said cameras were on him. They immediately switched. Now, I wrote to CNN, and I said, could I have a transcript of this program, which they said was available. I never got a reply. I followed it up with letter after letter, but nothing ever came of it. The point I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the federal government, the secret upper-level parallel government that runs the United States, does not want you to know that you have an upper-level parallel government that calls in mind.
That line changes everything.
I think
Because
we
now he's
sort
not
of kind of
describing a
already
theory.
knew that.
He's describing a system that protects
Slow down.
itself. Maybe there's an innocent explanation. Maybe not. But the point is this. If influence can decide what gets recorded, then it can also decide what gets remembered. And once power becomes something you can't even trace, the next question isn't who, it's where. Where does a structure like that live? Because it wouldn't operate as a rumor. It would operate through institutions. Pay attention to this part.
I revealed the existence of an organization called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is located in 10 St. James Square in London. I also revealed the existence of the Club of Rome, the Cini Foundation, the Mont Pelerin Society, the Order of St. John, which was known but not known. And I listed all of these secret societies that run the world as executive arms of the Committee of 300. So it controls the world through all of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs is the executive arm of this committee, which gives instructions to the United States government to this very day. The chain of command is as follows. Every Secretary of State that has been appointed since 1919 is appointed by the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That may come as a shock for you. You think you vote and you put a conservative in the White House, and then he appoints supposedly or allegedly conservative people to carry out the policies that you wanted him to implement. Surprise, surprise, conservative Secretary of State since 1919. And if you search diligently and apply the correct rules, you will come up blank. Every one of the Secretaries of State was chosen in London by the Secretary of State, as was Wilson, the President Wilson, as was Roosevelt, as was James Earl Carter. He was specially chosen because he'd had 3 mental breakdowns, and they felt he'd be a good guy to manipulate. Oh, I'm talking facts.
Different presidents, different parties, the same advisory structure. Because when policy is filtered before it even reaches an election, votes don't change direction, they change packaging. But institutional influence alone doesn't move societies. To shape real outcomes, it needs something stronger. Leverage, economic pressure, dependence that turns choices into necessities. And that's where the next phase begins.
This Committee of 300 told a man called Aurelio Pecci to form this Club of Rome with the main object of bringing down the industries and the agricultural development of the United States. He immediately wrote a paper in which he said there are too many people on the earth and that the United States, with its industrial development, its agricultural development, is responsible, instituted and organized to start an tipping point. And they came up with a paper called the Zero Growth Post-Industrial Plan for Industry and Agriculture for the United States of America.
This is where his claims shift from politics to pressure. He connects the committee of the Club of Rome. He connects the Club of Rome to zero growth. And then he connects zero growth to one outcome. The impact doesn't hit evenly. The wealthy buffer it, the poor adapt to it, and the middle absorbs it. Mortgages, wages, savings, stability. That's the layer that carries the strain. Now listen closely to what he claims next.
The middle class in the United States of America had to be destroyed because in the coming push to a world order, the middle class would be the stumbling block, because history had shown that the peasant class in ancient days, when they had revolted, were just easily crushed. There was no resistance. But now had grown a new super class of people in the United States called the middle class, who had long-term employment, who had job security, who were well paid, who could have from China or anywhere else. And the Club of Rome post-industrial zero growth paper said this has got to stop. We have to bring down the middle class of the United States. And the way that we will do this, the way that we will accomplish this task is by crushing their industries.
Whether you call it policy, markets, or global pressure, the weight never lands evenly. It lands where society is most stable, the middle. Because the middle has something to lose, a job, a mortgage, a routine, a future. And when that layer weakens, dependence grows quietly. Not overnight, but structurally. While ordinary people feel instability as pain, those above it experience the same events as logistics. They hedge, they move assets, they buy buffers. And that's the real divide. Not what happens, but who it happens to. Here's how Coleman explains it.
The Club of Rome celebrated its anniversary, and Alexander King, its chairman, stated, the American people henceforth must get used to the idea that they will never, ever again in their lifetime have full employment. Built up by the Royal Institute for International Affairs to destroy the middle class of the United States.
By the end of this, you realize something disturbing. Coleman isn't asking you to fear a group, he's asking you to notice a pattern. That power doesn't always rule by force, it rules by structure. It decides what gets funded, what gets outsourced, what gets normalized, and what becomes permanent. And once society is locked into pressure, it doesn't need to be controlled loudly. It controls itself. And that's why faces can change and the direction can stay identical. The question isn't who runs the world. Maybe it's simpler than that. What is the system designed to produce, no matter who you vote for?
The worst part was I named everybody. I named Donald Trump. I named everyone who I thought was a co-conspirator at the time. So I named Alan Dershowitz, absolutely the Clintons. These are people that I saw coming and going. And I made it really clear that this is a very scary thing for children, and that I see between 5 and 10 girls a day going upstairs. And now that I know what's happening to them, I want it stopped. And the weirdest part was at Wexner's, I was held under guard.
In these interviews from Whitney Webb, she discusses the attacks on her integrity and research as she exposes the bipartisan, transnational networks behind the Epstein scandal.
Information reach the widest audience possible. Without further ado, here's the first half of my conversation with Maria Farmer.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you for ages. I really, during all this stuff with Wexner, I've just been dying to talk to you because we just sort of have the scoop on them, and no one in the media is willing to talk about it.
Yeah,
no one I talk to about them ever felt.
Well, I interested in hearing what you have to say because, a lot of my interest, or not interest really, but focus on Epstein has been a lot of the stuff that happened, in the 90s and even before then, because I think that hasn't gotten enough attention.
That's
I think
why
that's where a lot of the real story is, right?
Exactly.
And so, right. I know that you know.
Yeah, so as much as they can with where it all began, they're going to keep it quiet, And the FBI, Whitney, is so much an evil. I mean, I can't even explain to you how abusive the effing FBI is. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, they first of all never offered me witness protection. And when I first called them, they knew I was telling. Believe me, they knew they knew everything I was telling them. They already knew his reactions when I was talking to him. I called and I got some answer guy, and then he passes me to some guy who's when I start talking about Wexner, and I asked the guy, do you have, this is all over the phone in 1996. I said, do you have a file on Les Wexner? And he said, why? And I said, he's the head of the snake in America. And I don't even know I was intuiting this. And also I think it's common sense when you see all this stuff going on. And anyway, when I said that to him, he said, yeah, I don't know, maybe we do. And I said, well, these people are using child pornography, and they've stolen photographs of my sisters. That right there would have been fingerprints on them, and the FBI will not take them from me. They never would. They would never take the envelopes that they stole. I mean, they photographed out of these envelopes, and I have proof. I still have the envelopes with me. And the FBI was like, yeah, no, we don't need that. They also knew in 1996 that I'd been trafficked and Annie had been trafficked. And that was the worst part. Was I named everybody. I named Donald Trump. I named everyone who I thought was a co-conspirator at the time. So I named like Alan Dershowitz, Donald Trump, absolutely the Clintons. These are people that I saw coming and going, that I knew were part of it. And I made it really clear that this is a very scary thing for children, and that I see between 5 and 10 girls a day going upstairs. And now that I know what's happening to them, I want it stopped. And
Webb's research into the Epstein network is built on thousands of footnotes and original sources, not hearsay or rumor. She explains how the same elite actors and institutions keep reappearing in every major scandal, and why attempts to discredit her work are really about protecting the bipartisan, transnational networks that have operated with impunity for decades.
Yeah, I was held under guard. So when I first got there, this guy named Randy Bowie was there to show me around. And I got there in a Ryder truck with someone who is an acquaintance, not even a great friend.
Mural at Wexner's mansion? This is what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I had told Epstein, because I was really grossed out by them, I said, just the way they behaved, they were so ostentatious and like nouveau riche, like always buying things and all about things, especially Guylaine. And she would always scream at me. She was very verbally abusive. I have a lot to tell you about her. A lot. I know her very, very well. I would say Virginia and I are the only two that really know her, and I know her well. I lived around her for a year, like lived in all of their houses with them. Oh my gosh, that woman is the most dangerous asset for Israel that you can even imagine. I mean, she is so dangerous. And she grew up with the royals. Like, she showed me all the photo albums, but I'll get back to that. But anyway, just basically up, and he said, oh, hey, you're going to really love it here. And he's like, and Abigail's going to call you in a minute and welcome you here. And she's really excited about it. So the deal was, I had taken a project from this guy who's a director, James Brooks. He's a director of like a lot of films. I think he did The Simpsons. He does a lot of stuff. And that wasn't even going to be a big deal. Eric Fischel to do the painting for the movie. And Eric Fischel said, you know what? I have someone that I'm too busy right now, but I know someone who would love that opportunity. And he handed it to me. And I, James Brooks on the phone, and he said, okay, I'm going to take a look at your work, then we'll decide. He picked me. And then I said to Jeffrey and Guylaine, I want to quit because, be doing these paintings for this movie. And they said, no, you can't quit. You can't quit. This is what they did every time. I don't know why, but they were like, no, you can't quit. And at this point, they'd already seen a picture of Annie, so that may be why too. And they're like, okay, so you can just go and do this project at Wexner's because we've actually, filed and meaning to send you there because Abigail said she wants an artist in residence. Yeah, Abigail Wexner wanted me as an artist in residence. There is what Epstein and Maxwell told me. So anyway, when I get there, so I wasn't I was doing no project for the Wexners. I didn't care about them, I wasn't impressed with them or anything, and I didn't even want to go there. I did not want to go to Ohio, but I did. I went to Ohio, and when I got there, he was saying to me, Randy was like, listen, you'll go inside and take a call from Abigail, but don't come outside again unless you call her and get her permission. Now here I'm standing outside, and it's really beautiful with my little dog, and I'm thinking, wait, what? And my stomach just sank, and that was like the first clue. And so I talked to her, and she was very phony, creepy, but, very like over the top of me for like 20 minutes, congratulating me on the project, telling me. So when this woman says she's never heard of me, I want to slap her because not only has she heard of me, she kept me captive in that house. I mean, I went out 3 months and no one ever talked about it. I was there for 3 months and I was only allowed outside like 4 or 5 times the whole time I was there. And the other thing that the mainstream crappy lying media will never talk about, I guess because Wexner has such ownership of them. I think he's embarrassed of like the wealth or something because the house I lived in, that was the guest house, was 26 house. Yeah, his house, which was right behind it, and I can send you pictures. I mean, really close. Like I have pictures of my brother on the back porch, and this was one of the times we were allowed out, and you can see their house very clearly from him, and you can see in an aerial view. It looks like a second set of arches. Anyway, it's the guest house. And it very much was owned by them, and they had 330 acres that surrounded it, so you can't leave the house. But they're trying to say, we don't have anything to do with that house she was living in. Anyway, whatever. So I guess allegedly they had handed it over to Jeffrey for like a year, You know, they were always doing these really creepy money laundering things with real estate.
Yeah, I know.
And
I was going to do a whole series on that actually, because I think that's where
so
the whole Epstein-Trump relationship is from. All the, you know, real estate and stuff in Manhattan that was going on there. It was being passed around to all these shady shell companies and stuff.
Yeah, it's so weird. So anyway, but this house that I lived in, I mean, so while I'm there the whole time, I would call, and the other part, I had been told that I would be able to eat at this country club and stay there. I mean, you know, go there and play tennis. And I don't really play tennis or anything, but I thought, oh, I'll learn how to play tennis. I'm in Ohio. Why not? And so I only got to go there twice and take a couple lessons. I don't know if you know about Claire Hazel. Do you know about her?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, she's someone you really need to look into her, because she's a key co-conspirator that no one discusses. And Ghislaine got her married off to one of the what are they called? The Guinness family. So now she's Lady Claire. And you're not going to believe this, Whitney. You know, the Eyes Wide Shut? It was filmed in Lady Claire's mansion, estate.
Wow. It says Claire Hazel is dead. Is that true? I didn't. Oh no, that's a different.
What?
Person. No. It says obituary in Cincinnati, Ohio. No, that's not the same person. Then.
No. This Claire Hazel is British, and Ghislaine brought her over. She procured girls from England, at least 2, and you can tell by the flight logs. When I was in Ohio, but Jeffrey introduces her to me as his girlfriend, and he had already told me he was married to Ghislaine, and I'm like, wow, this is so confusing. You know, I had no idea what's happening.
The truth is, these crimes were never meant to come to light. The system was built to protect itself, not the vulnerable. But survivors like Maria Farmer refused to stay silent, risking everything to expose the hidden machinery of abuse and cover-up. The evidence is clear. The world's most powerful people are not above the law. They are shielded by it. Only by questioning authority, demanding transparency, and refusing to accept official stories can we hope to break the cycle of secrecy and bring real justice. The fight isn't over, and the truth will not stay buried.
How did this happen? How did a company which stood by the American warfighter, Marine special operators?
He goes, we empower the American warfighter. A company that's anti-woke, and we empower the American warfighter. Well, I'm sure that's great news for the American warfighters are really happy. Thank God. Hey, I'll go tell the American warfighters that you're empowering them. They'll love to hear that. Hey, guess what? Hey, Billy, guess what? Oh, you're in Iran? Oh, you have PTSD? Well, guess what? Now, here's a VR headset. Oh, you were poor, so you joined the Marines, and now you're in Iran, at a base in Iran, in the desert, and your wife divorced you, and she cheated on you with your high school best friend, and you're in Iran, and you're alone. I have news. We're empowering you. What's cool about the Palantir virtual reality headset for the warfighter is that it's, number one, has thermal imaging, and number two, when you look at the kids, we have an interactive real-time fear gauge so you can see how scared they are as you chase them down. Now, this is something we're very proud of, where we're leveraging AI and we're leveraging ontology. And we're leveraging these tools through LLMs, large language models, where we can actually look at the kid's face as you point an assault rifle. In fact, it's so powerful that it actually shoots the gun for you. So we leverage this data, and then you don't even decide whether or not to
be less involved.
In this video, we will talk about how Peter Thiel is a presidential election and is even affecting the entire world. Every movie villain has a backstory. In real life, the villains more often than not have a road paved by gold, while slave labor builds their entire net worth brick by brick. Of course, they take credit for every single achievement. They spend their actual time to fight any pushback in the system to make sure no lowly peasants reaches their level of success. To be a sick individual, it's got to start early. And for Peter Thiel, it does. He was born in Germany and then moved to Ohio. And everything out of Ohio, you're LeBron. His correctness when his engineering
that he's from the Nazi Party. He moved because the Nazis lost the war, and he was a Nazi. A large amount of Nazis moved to South Africa after the war, so much so that German was the second most spoken language in the region they were in.
Which, as you could guess, he was not moving to South Africa to be oppressed, but to do the oppressing and make money off of slavery. There's another rich freak out there who learned how to oppress folks from South Africa, and sadly, we all know him. Elon Musk, the king of failing upwards, who we will talk about later in this video, because the dynamic of their relationship is really weird. More on that later. Peter Thiel is white, so he went to private schools in South Africa, got into government contracts, and started mining uranium. And by him mining, I mean he was using slavery of the African people to mine these materials for the South African, Israeli, French, and Chinese government to build atomic bombs. And I'd say at such a young age, this is probably how Peter Thiel became demented, because the Africans that were working had no clue they were even building a uranium mine.
The magic of uranium stems from its property of radioactivity. It is this same property.
So the risk of radiation, yeah, they were never even told about them. There's quotes from that time period that said the workers were dying like flies, and the people that were running the entire operation knew. It was so bad that the white folks that would pay these workers would do it behind glass, so they didn't get any radiation poisoning.
Of radon and its daughters is inhaled. Many radon daughters are retained in the lungs, where their decay and release of alpha particles can damage living tissue. The hazard is, therefore...
Speaking of poisoning his workers, there's a famous quote that is, you can even see apartheid from space, because when looking at apartheid South Africa, the workers' homes were always near the radiation, while the rich white folks' homes would be built on the mountains, so no radiation would get blown into their neighborhoods. And obviously they did this because they were just poor labor class and their lives meant nothing to them. So his father was your usual scum, taking advantage of the apartheid system and slavery. Would you be surprised if I told you the apple does not fall far from the tree? Eventually, Peter and his family moved to California to run a gold mine. He spent the rest of his time growing up in California, and because Peter got private education, he was smart and always did well in school. In college, he ended up at Stanford, but because he wasn't socializing much, the boy was awkward and he had no social skills. You better believe if he was growing up today, he would be in the conservative pipeline, quoting fresh Andrew Tate. Any other social skill lacking rich white guy, he joined the Republicans. His classmates from that time were asked, my light fell out.
But if you find this video interesting, please like and subscribe so one day I can make that video.
His classmates later on in life were asked what they remember about him, and they remembered him saying the whole apartheid thing wasn't that bad and it was overblown. His first real step into the public eye was writing his book called The Diversity Myth, written by Peter Thiel and David Sachs, who was a venture capitalist who was also born in South African apartheid. David Sachs and Peter Thiel have been in many partnerships and ventures together even to this day. In his book, The Diversity Myth, he blames women for rape and discussed how higher education was increasing multiculturalization, and this would harm the future of America. He just wanted to be around a bunch of white guys 24/7. Peter ended up getting his law degree and tried to walk that road, but gave it up because when you're rich, you can just give up law, and then tried to trade stocks and failed miserably and gave that up too. After that, he went to daddy and relatives and pulled together $1 million to start a hedge fund in the late 1990s, because we can all $1 million to start our own hedge fund. Now, if you ask me, this is a good old-fashioned American hard-working guy who did it all on his own with no help from anyone. Then he was in California. He was in the Bay Area. He was in the right place at the right time and was able to capitalize off the dot-com boom. This is when his life actually starts to get interesting. He invested in FieldLink, which was a technology created by Max Levchin, who was an actual coder and created a way for people to transfer money between Palm Pilots. I'm not sure how many people are even old enough to remember what Palm Pilots are, but they're like the iPhone before the iPhone. FieldLink later changed the name to Cofinity, which most people have probably never heard of. Out of this company spawned something that most people have heard of, which is the system they use to make secure payments. That is PayPal. One of the main reasons he decided to invest and make PayPal was because he thought it could be turned into an alternate currency to take down the US government. Another quick note on PayPal, Thiel and Levchin, they employed no women and were proud of denying a candidate who said he enjoyed playing hoops instead of basketball. Sure, you could guess the reason for that. But back to Cofinity, this company was still only able to make payments between Palm Pilots, but literally in the building next door was the company X. Yes, there was a company named X, and you can probably tell where this is going. Company X was trying to do the exact same thing except across all phones. That company was ran by none other than Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was a madman. He had aspirations to make PayPal so big that no one could stop them, and they did this by paying people to sign up for PayPal. We're paying people to sign up for their product. Eventually, their user base became massive, with most of their payments coming from porn and gambling. They decided to shift into taking a small percentage of every payment that went through their app. Banks and other partners were not happy about this. The company had grown so much that they became untouchable. Their partners in the banks just had to accept it. Elon Musk partnering up with Peter Thiel ended up, which they called themselves the PayPal mafia, decided to boot Elon Musk when he was on vacation with his first wife. Back then, Elon called it a coup, and he would later say in an interview he was so furious that he had thoughts of assassination. But of course, Elon has no spine, so eventually he came back to Thiel and said, "I'm sorry, Daddy, for being rude," which was the smartest thing he could do because eventually Thiel would come to the rescue and save him. One of the most important parts of the PayPal situation was how Peter Thiel managed to stack $5 billion of straight cash in a Roth IRA account. The Roth IRA account was created for low and middle class Americans to try and stow away money for retirement. But of course, these freak billionaires found every way to take advantage of it. In Thiel's case, he forced the PayPal board to give him money to buy stocks in the company pre-IPO, which is before they go public, and then also took money from his own Roth account to buy over 500,000 stocks, which was illegal if you controlled the company. But at the time, he didn't. He found the loophole. Thiel was a trendsetter at this. Him and many other rich people took advantage of this system. In the coming years, Congress loosened the laws on this, so Thiel repeated this multiple times with multiple different companies. Any gains made in Roth IRA accounts are not taxed, so he will have access to that account with $5 billion when he turns 59. Peter Thiel is 57. Back to the main storyline. Eventually, PayPal was bought out by eBay for $1.2 billion. Elon made a lot of money selling PayPal, and he decided to start funding SpaceX. SpaceX was burning through cash, and eventually got to the point where Elon couldn't fund it anymore. He didn't have the money to do the fourth launch. His company should have been cooked, but here comes the same man he said he wanted to assassinate to the rescue. Thiel and friends gave Elon Musk $20 million and allowed him to successfully launch his fourth rocket. After this successful launch, the government gave him a $1.6 billion contract, and Thiel's investment company now owns 10% of SpaceX. Thiel's connections don't stop there. He was also an early investor in YouTube, LinkedIn, and he was the first outside investor of Facebook in 2004. If you think about social media in terms of the algorithm, there's only one he doesn't have his hands in, and that's TikTok. But I want to say a very strong doesn't have his hands on it yet. I could go on and on about Thiel's history, but it's time to talk about how we see Thiel today. Because everything in what we are seeing today in conservative media is Peter Thiel, even Hulk Hogan. Peter Thiel secretly funded Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against a media platform called Gawker. They released a sex tape of Hulk Hogan a while back, and he ended up winning $160 million from that lawsuit in stage with Trump. There is no way that these things don't have correlation. Let's go over a list of companies that Peter Thiel has ownership in right now. He owns LinkedIn, SpaceX, Stripe, YouTube, Meta, Oculus, Lyft, Rumble, Airbnb, and the list goes on and on. Thiel is on the forefront of technology for the military and government contracts. One of the companies being Palantir Technologies. Palantir's first investor was the CIA. The CIA has a capital investment firm called In-Q-Tel, and Palantir as a whole racked up over $1.2 billion of investments from the US government alone. Now, I don't know if you remember, but Thiel started PayPal to overthrow the government. Now his biggest investors in his company is the US government. This is very much like Elon Musk, two complete idiots that benefit from the government while trying to take down the government. It quite literally makes my brain hurt. Palantir is very active with military equipment using AI to commit attacks based on what the AI believes to be threats currently being used on the Palestinians. This use of AI did not start last year. This has been going on since 2021 when it committed atrocities in Palestine. And back in 2021, Israel said that the use of this technology could be considered the first AI war. AI needs an insane amount of information and data to fuel itself, and there's no need to guess how Israel has gotten the data on Palestinians. Whistleblowers have come out saying that the NSA had provided Israel with raw data on phone records and emails from Palestinian Americans that would be in contact with their relatives in occupied territories. The NSA stated they are providing unfiltered texts and scripts of conversations that U.S. citizens are having with their relatives directly to Israel. And this abuse of power is how they were able to target Palestinians. The company is now saying it's currently developing an even more powerful AI targeting system. According to Palantir, Titan is a next-generation intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance ground station enabled by artificial intelligence. It has machine learning to process data received from space, high-altitude, aerial, and terrestrial layers. Knowing that SpaceX owns Starlink, which is Elon's satellite company, and a quick reminder, Thiel also owns a part of that, it would make sense how he has the capability to do all these things, and most likely under Trump with Elon's H-17 on American soil. And sadly, they were correct. Teal has used AI facial recognition under Trump's first presidency to assist ICE to find immigrants. They used information from Palantir to find and target unaccompanied migrant children to abduct them from their families. And this is exactly how we saw kids ending up in cages. The mass deportation that Trump has talked about will be on the back of Teal's technology. And this time, there will be no one in power to stop him. And the reason why is because the people in power he put there. He has been involved in politics since 2007, although not successful early on, funding candidates like Ron Paul for president who failed, and then tried funding Meg Whitman for governor of California who also failed. He failed again in 2012, setting up a YouTube channel for Mitt Romney when he was running for president, and that time he spent $3.3 million in ads. Finally, Teal found success in 2016 during Trump's campaign. Teal was a prominent figure in speaker tokenizing himself of being a proud gay man in the Republican Party. I'm sure the conservative men that were crashing the Grindr apps were also feeling very inspired to speak their truths. This is where the success really begins. His power within politics would skyrocket. He has now funded Ted Budd, Senator of Washington, D.C., Ted Cruz, Senator of Texas, Blake, Senator of Missouri. He has funded these House of Representative members: Tom Cole, Mike Gallagher, Harriet Hageman, Brian Harrison, Joe Kent, Kevin McCarthy, Chris Stewart, Michael Waltz, Patrick Witt, one of the most President J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, without Peter Thiel, some big misogynistic. With his help, he rose to ribbons. Prior to getting involved in politics, decided to open a venture capitalist firm. Can you guess who gave the seed money to start it? Was none other than our boy, Peter Thiel. After that, Vance decided to run for Senate in Ohio. Thiel gave his super PAC to J.D. Vance receiving the nominee. And this is where it gets a little weird. In 2024, Thiel says he's taking a step back from politics and won't be donating to Trump's campaign because all of a sudden, he thinks money won't help win this election. And this is just what I believe. He decided to not invest his money publicly because he is investing his money in the background, funding right-wing influencers, podcasts, and journalists, and even building an entire university. Co-founder of Palantir, Joe Lonsdale, created Texas University as a non-woke alternative college and has raised some $200 million to teach forbidden courses by people like Mark Andreessen. Thiel also gives scholarships and is an active donor to this college. Thiel also has an insane amount of connections to the people that Trump is bringing in to run different parts of the Masters, who has also worked for Thiel, is under consideration to head up the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. When Blake mastered the circumstances of this endorsement, he suspected members of the Trump campaign and friends. This guy's claiming he didn't even. Peter Thiel has also directly impacted how we see money entering politics today. Many entrepreneurs who had not been politically active said the opportunity was too good to pass up. The chance to influence the government is a huge opportunity, said Jack Abram, who leads Thiel's foundation. Honestly, this rabbit hole I've been on, connecting all these dots, seeing who has their hands in what company and what part of government they are going to be influenced, is truly mind-boggling and hard to even understand how deep all of this goes.
I made this video prior to Donald Trump's inauguration, and this news article solidifies what I've been saying. A Trump party hosted by Peter Thiel with all of Silicon Valley. The party symbolized the euphoria of the tech industry on the
Let's celebrate a gay icon. He's a billionaire. He hates democracy. He's argued that women voting was a mistake, and he's funded politicians who want to roll back LGBT. Welcome to